Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss a remarkable device that I've seen some Conservative commentators and MPs using to try and calm themselves down after the by-election defeats last week. It is sticking their head in the sand to a quite remarkable degree and got me to reflect on what their long-term strategy for Boris Johnson ever was. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So I came across this nonsense at the weekend, and then I saw a clip. It was being discussed on LBC by Boris Johnson's sister, Rachel Johnson, is a presenter there. And it goes like this. So if you add up the votes that Labour got in both constituencies, Wakefield, that they were campaigning for, Tiverton and Huntington, that they weren't, it was just under 15,000. Now, if you do the same for the Liberal Democrats, it was 23,000. And you do the same for the Conservatives, it was nearly 25,000. It's like, wow, the Tories got more votes in the two seats that they were fighting than either of the two parties who were only fighting in one of those seats. Hurrah, the Tories win. I'm not kidding. This is what some of them are actually saying. This is the level of desperation. Never mind that they lost both seats. Never mind that they are adding up the results for two seats that they tried to win and comparing it with the single seat that either Labour or the Lib Dems were campaigning for. But as I said in a response myself, welcome to the world of first past the post. Your overall vote tally is meaningless. But it shows the depths to which some Tories are sinking in order to try and convince themselves and others that the results weren't that bad. But it's a winner-takes-all electoral system we've got. The Tories fought two by-elections, both of which they won at the last election and both of which they've now lost. The same thing is very likely to happen at the next by-election and the next, because there are likely to be more by-elections as more Tory MPs are under investigation for serious naughtiness. In fact, if Tory MPs do keep Johnson as leader, he may have to face a by-election in his own seat before the year is out. Remember, Privileges Committee is investigating whether or not he deliberately misled Parliament. This investigation has the potential to lead to a suspension of long enough to trigger a recall petition in his own seat. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. Tory MPs would be insane not to get rid of him before that happens. But maybe they are insane. Because I was discussing this the other day. The relationship that Tory MPs have with Boris Johnson. Because I was thinking about how it all started. It should be remembered, he's only Prime Minister because of Brexit. Johnson's got no support base in Parliament. Like, lots of leaders have their own supporters, natural supporters. Theresa May had her supporters, David Cameron had her supporters, and so on. Johnson hasn't actually got any serious allies. He's only got those who see him as an election winner, a tool. You know, even those who doubt this will still back him for a while because they can't think of anyone who is an election winner. And this is why he became leader. Back in 2019, Theresa May had to go. It wasn't working out. But the party was still paralysed by Brexit. The ERG were hell-bent on a hard Brexit at all cost. They would even sacrifice the Conservative Party to do it. It's not their party anyway. They're basically UKIP entryists. So for the sake of the party, they gave in to their terrorist wing and accepted the hard Brexit. But how to do it? The deadlock was real. There was no way of Parliament agreeing to go along with a no-deal Brexit, so there had to be a deal. But there was no deal that could satisfy the ERG. And even if the ERG went along with a solution, there still wouldn't be the votes in Parliament to get it through. Put simply, they needed more MPs. Only a general election could get them that. But they wouldn't win a general election, so they turned to Johnson. The only one who seemed to have the charisma to get them the support of the various different groups of voters necessary. So they made him leader. Jeremy Hunt came second, not a distant second. He'd have been a sensible choice in many ways, but he was never going to win them that election. He was never going to go ahead with the hard Brexit. So they made Boris Johnson the leader. Now, it was an appalling decision for the country and they knew it. But if your only concern was either the stability of your party or the safety of your seat, it was a strategically sound decision. It made sense. And it turned out that it was correct. But it surely wasn't a long-term decision. Tory MPs that backed him at the time knew he couldn't govern. He was there just to get that election through, just to get them out of the EU, and that was it. There were reports of some Tory MPs who supported him asking to his face, saying, well, basically, what are you going to do about your laziness? We know you can't govern. How are you going to manage? And Johnson replied, that he would build a cabinet of superstars. But he didn't, did he? He built a cabinet of toadies, senior ministers who wouldn't challenge him, either because they were too useless to, like Raab or Doris, or because they were too dull, like Wallace or Gove. This is why I thought that they would get rid of Johnson in 2021. There was a chance he would have been gone by the end of 2020. I mean, really, they no longer needed him once he left the EU. We didn't need him, or they didn't need him to get the trade deal with the EU. But they'd need an excuse to remove him. They can't just wait to have left the EU. Right, time to get rid of him because it looks a bit sus. Why did you get rid of him? So late 2020, Labour overtook the Conservatives in the polls. So there was pressure on Johnson. There was talk of him being removed. He's no longer the electoral asset, need to get rid of him. But then he sort of subtly let it be known he was going to quit the following spring anyway because he couldn't afford the fees for the nanny. There was also worry about the Brexit deal negotiations, how they would proceed with a different leader. So it was considered much less hassle to leave Johnson where he was. But once the deal was in place, that was it. You know, they were going to get no further use from Johnson at all. But then the vaccine boost got the polls bouncing back in 2021, so he was safe again. I mean, why would you get rid of a leader who's riding high in the polls? Naturally, he didn't quit in the spring at all. Turns out he can afford a nanny somehow. You know, that was an obvious lie to take the heat off him. But then the Owen Paterson scandal blew up. Not for the first time, Tory MPs have been told to vote for a deeply unpopular measure, only for the government to U-turn when the inevitable public backlash came. But this was a turning point. They were now sick of it. They'd had enough. Johnson had already lost a by-election at this point, Chesham and Amersham, a safe Tory seat. That had been lost to the Lib Dems in the summer. And this was before the scandal started hitting home. This was purely because of Johnson's economic policy. But the autumn of last year, several things were happening. First, it was clear that the Tories were losing support in their heartlands. Tory strategists calculated that they could afford to lose this support without losing too many seats. So, I mean, that's not good news for the few Tory MPs who might have had their seats sacrificed, but the majority of them would go along with it because the party would still win the election. Second, Tory MPs were now fed up with Johnson making them look feckless and immoral with his constant U-turns of unpopular policies. Third, Labour were overtaking the Conservatives in the polls again. This time, there wasn't anything on the horizon likely to save them. Then Partygate hit. Now, this was the moment when Tory MPs should have acted. Right from the start, they knew Johnson would be useless in government. They knew he was too hot to handle. They made him leader to get them out of the EU, prevent the party splitting. They took everything else that comes with him as the cost for doing that. But they'd got what they wanted now, so why carry on paying the cost? It's been achieved. The second we left the EU, there was no further need to keep paying that cost. Sure, let him deal with the EU trade deal to avoid the next leader taking the blame for that as well. But from 2021 onwards, there was no value in keeping Johnson on. And it seemed to me that all Tory MPs were waiting for was an opportunity to get rid of him that would make sense to the public. Partygate was that opportunity. And if that wasn't enough, the loss of the ultra-safe seat of North Shropshire, one of their safest seats, the Tories have had it for 200 years, that should have been the sign. But no, not even a confidence vote at the time. This is the point where I started to doubt that Tory MPs are paying attention at all. Up until that point, I could see their relationship with Johnson as being strategic. The sort of cunning ruthlessness I associate with the Conservatives. Only Boris Johnson can achieve this thing for us, put him in charge. Right, he's achieved that thing for us. Is he of any use? No. Cut him off. Get rid of him. Cut the cord, get someone else in. But no. From last December, that was out the window. Yes, I understand that it's one thing to get rid of Johnson, quite another to replace him. I also get that the ERG still aren't satisfied with leaving the EU, even under a hard Brexit. You know, they still lay ready to split the party if a more sensible replacement tries to govern sensibly. But consider that vote of confidence, which Johnson won a few weeks ago. Just to highlight how stupid I think a lot of Tory MPs are now. Consider what all Tory MPs knew at the time. Not just now, not with hindsight, at the time. First, they knew that Johnson cannot govern. Most knew it from the start. But it was clear by this point that he has no follow-through. All he wants to do is campaign. He wants to make speeches about great plans for the future, but there are never any plans. All he announces are the outcomes he wants to achieve, and then he calls it a plan. But there is never a plan for them. He never sits down and just makes sure they get done. Once he's announced one set of outcomes, called it a plan, he's focused on planning his next policy speech. They've seen this for 3 years. It's always about the future. Jam tomorrow, that's all he's for. Second, they knew he has lost the trust of the public. Once you lose someone's trust, you have to work quite hard to get it back. Johnson is not even attempting to do so. He won't even properly apologise for his behaviour. He sometimes expresses regret that he got caught, but never an apology. And when he has come close to apologising, belatedly, he immediately tells his MPs that he wasn't sorry at all and would do it all again. I mean, what's he doing now? He's complaining that people are complaining about his behaviour. He's not accepting that his behaviour was wrong. He's saying that it's other people's fault for complaining about it. Third, they knew he was an electoral liability. Even given that some Tory MPs thought that they might still win the Tiverton and Honiton seat, they must have known that they would suffer a catastrophic loss of vote share. You know, in conjunction with the loss of North Shropshire and Cheshire and Amersham, applied to marginal constituencies, that represents a trajectory of losing a lot of seats at the next general election. The only thing his allies can ever say in defence of keeping Johnson is that he's an election winner. Oh, he won the mayoral elections. And he's won a general election. Yeah, he's not going to win any more though, is he? And fourth, biggest of them all, the Privileges Committee investigation runs the very serious risk in the next few months of finding against him and recommending a significant suspension. If Tory MPs block that suspension, the party will suffer another calamitous blow to their reputation. If they don't, Johnson will be recalled from Parliament. Their leader and Prime Minister will no longer even be an MP. And that will be damaging enough. But he could easily lose the subsequent by-election. The only way he can become an MP again is fighting a by-election. He could easily lose it. And if the 1922 committee do not change the rules to allow for another confidence vote before then, they will have no way of removing him either. We will have an unelected Prime Minister with their only way out to trigger a general election. And some people may say, well, what if he doesn't fight his own seat? What if he gets someone to step down from a safe Tory seat so there's two by-elections? Right now, it does not seem credible that Boris Johnson can win any by-election. You could give him the safest seat in the land and there's a very good chance he would lose it. Nightmare scenario for Tory MPs, and it was all predictable. They haven't learned anything new since that confidence vote a few weeks ago. Everything I've just gone over then was known then. Which is why I can only conclude that a clear majority of Tory MPs show not even the slightest level of strategic thinking. They have no idea how to plot out a political trajectory. And this is why the relatively small number who can see how things are playing out are utterly desperate to get another confidence vote very, very quickly. But their colleagues just seem too dim to see it, even though I'm sure it's been pointed out to them. And this stupidity has got a very high chance now of being their downfall. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.